Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Sportsbook Confidential. My name is John Sullivan, and I'm coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. And this little show here is to help you learn and grow as a sports bettor. And starting a little late today, but thank you for hanging on, and hope you enjoy the program today. We're going to talk Kentucky Derby. I'm going to give you my quick and dirty picks for the Kentucky Derby, and we've got some other racing this weekend. We've got NASCAR in Kansas, and we've got the Portugal Formula One Grand Prix. Not going to have a sportsbook lesson today. I just feel like there's a lot of good content, but we are going to talk about why there is tremendous value on the Kentucky Derby every year and why you should pay attention and consider betting on the Kentucky Derby. We're going to talk about the reasons for that, and then different ways you can handicap, even if you're not a horse person or you're not really sure how the whole parimutuel system works. You're looking for, obviously, the horses that are going to either win the race or come in certain combinations. So we'll get into that. And then there's a great racing weekend. We had the NFL draft yesterday. I did not get a chance to see the draft, so I don't have any comments on that. But I will be going into NFL futures in the next few weeks. Of course, as we hit the summer, I like to do a division in the NFL every week. As we approach the football season, it's a big time of year for me. There's a lot of value. We had value last year in our futures in the NFL. I feel like there's going to be some tremendous value this year, that some teams are going to be very overrated and others will be very underrated. So before we get into all our content today, let's do what we always do and update our bankroll. And had a big loser last week. Not much we could do about it. We had the Talladega race, and we had a full unit on Denny Hamlin. That was a loser, minus $8 to the bankroll. And we had picked 6 other drivers. We put a quarter unit each on all of them. Brad Keselowski won this race, and he accordioned Denny Hamlin and a few other drivers that I had in my picks, and they had to come back from damage. Although Eric Jones, I had at 66-1, was right there at the end. I think he was running second or third when they spun out on the last turn or whatever. But that's restrictor plate racing. That's why it's bingo. That's why you have to go with the long odds. So none of our drivers came in, so that was minus $12 to the bankroll. And then I had an Aussie Rules pick on the Sydney Swans, and they laid an egg in the second half. There was a 1-point game there for a while, and minus $8 to the bankroll. C'est la vie. If you do the math, that is minus $28 to the bankroll, which brings our bankroll down to anemic 230. And if you divide by 30, as we always do, because we try to remain selective, makes our bet size $8 going forward this week. So hopefully we can get back to our winning ways and add a little money to the bankroll. So let's start with the Kentucky Derby. And I like to call the Kentucky Derby Value City. Not because it's like a chain of furniture stores or home improvement stores, but there's a lot of value in this race. Obviously, it's the first of the 3 Triple Crown races. It is the most handicapped race of the year, which you can use that to your advantage. Usually the largest field of the Triple Crown races, I'm not off the top of my head, I know what the total is this year, but I've seen it as many as 21 horses. Even the best horses don't run fields this big ever before or after ever in their racing careers. So you don't know how certain horses are going to react to being in such a large group. If you are not a horse handicapper, you can find excellent content. So if you don't know much about horses or how to judge horses or how much to weigh on which jockey is being used or if a horse is wearing blinders or wraps or who the trainer is or what bloodline they're from, there's going to be, for this race, you will have no trouble sitting down and finding loads of content online. I'm not saying all of it's going to be good, but I am telling you that there will be somewhere there will be quality content for sure, and there will be plenty to read. So there's one of the reasons why I call this Value City is there's huge public money on this race. It's like a rite of spring. People go to the Kentucky Derby, even at the local OTB right near my house. It's the one day of the year that you can barely walk in there. You can't put your elbows out because there's so many people in there. Well, maybe not this year with the COVID going on, but that's how it used to be. Everybody would go down and have drinks and watch the race and bet and just have a degenerate Saturday with their buddies. And a lot of public money, a lot of people that don't follow horse racing at all and not interested in handicapping the race. They just want action on the race, or they like the horse's name, or their birthday is on the 13th, so they want horse number 13. Heavy novice money makes the market inefficient, creating value, and that's the bottom line. So with parimutuel racing, the odds are set by the money that is actually wagered on each horse, whereas at a sports book, the odds are set by the sportsbook management. So they choose which odds to give you when you walk into the sports book. However, the parimutuel system, which is how all horse racing works, they change the odds based upon the money that's been laid down. And those odds change all the way up to the post time. So there can be very inefficient markets for a race like this with so many entries. It's very, very hard to handicap such a large field, and there's so many uncertainties. Because obviously uncertainty creates value. We talked about that a few weeks ago with the NASCAR dirt race. They hadn't run on dirt in 50 years, so nobody knew what was going to happen. And the odds were off the charts because they couldn't offer a good line on anybody as a solid favorite. So right here, favorites have won often in the recent years, and here's the issue with that. Favorites winning is great, but this race, the way it's set up, is tend to offer value on the medium to long odd horses. There are people that just bet money on number 13 because they like 13 or whatever. But unless there are two or three co-favorites, usually if there's one horse that's a favorite, a lot of heavy money will come in on that. There are people that like to bring their, what I like to call stupid money, and, be flashy and place a huge bet. And it's more about the PR of placing a big bet. And so, of course, if they want to win, they're going to pick a favorite. And favorites have done really well in the last 5 to 10 years. I'm not going to lie. So I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of value on other horses besides the favorites this year, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But if you're a trend better type of person, you should probably take note of that. I don't think it has any effect on any other years going forward, other than to say maybe people handicap the race well. It is the most handicapped race of the year, so maybe somebody's finally figured out a good way to handicap it. All right, I prefer handicapping software to pick my horses, but I understand that is not for everyone. I've tried several different handicapping softwares for horses. There's one in particular I really like. I'm not going to say its name. It's not that I don't want you to use it, but a lot of these services or softwares have free trials. So you can go out and pick one, and you can download it today and handicap the race for tomorrow. It won't cost you a cent. But just search for handicapping software. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the favorites by a couple of different metrics. And not any one of these is by itself should be a single determining factor in your handicapping. But I'm just going to point out different ways that we can measure the horses without being super smart or creating a model or using software. So we're going to start with the point standings. Now, in order to qualify for the Kentucky Derby, you have to earn so many points by participating in qualifying races, stakes races, and you earn enough points, and then you get an invitation to the Kentucky Derby. And based on the point standings, these are the top 5 horses: Essential Quality, Hot Rod Charlie, Super Stock, Like the King, and Known Agenda. And you will see that a couple of those are the favorites for the race coming up. And also based on stakes earnings, which is just stakes races, you're going to see a lot of the same names, because the horses that ran a lot of races are definitely going to qualify for the Derby because they had more chance to earn points. And if they ran a lot of races, they had a lot of earnings. And you can see that those are very similar. Essential Quality, Hot Rod Charlie, same top two. Superstock, same top three. And then Cowan is the fourth in stakes earnings. That doesn't necessarily mean that that horse just may have run a lot of races and earned a lot of money. So take that for what you will. I just wanted to throw these different metrics up here and say, okay, we measure things this way, we measure things that way. But you can see from these first two, Essential Quality, Hot Rod Charlie, Superstock, are showing very well. All right, and then let's move on to the next one. And this is where I stopped for the handicapping for today. But this is what jumped out at me. And for those of you that don't want to hear different ways to handicap the race, I'll just get right to it. Brisnet Speed Figures from their last outings, competitive outings. We're not talking workouts. We're talking their last stakes outings. And what jumped out at me the other day looking into this was Brooklyn Strong at 107, and that was an insane number. If that horse can, even if they're 10% off that speed rating, they're going to be competitive. It will remain to be seen how these horses react into a giant field. And again, the distance is, I believe it's a mile and a quarter, or a mile and an eighth, or a mile and a quarter. For the Kentucky Derby, and that horse is not reflected in the odds as being the fastest horse. And there is a high correlation to previous Kentucky Derby winners and Brisnet Speed Figures over 100. So the other ones that came up with in their last outings over 100, Essential Quality, they're strong in every metric. Highly Motivated had a 102. Rock Your World had a 101, and Known Agenda had a 101. So you can see that Known Agenda and Essential Quality have shown up on all the metrics. Obviously, that's reflected in the odds. They're close to being the favorites. There's 2 or 3 horses that are under 10-1, I think. And as we get closer to race time, the market will show who they think the clear favorite is. The market may, this is the point I was making at the beginning of the show. The market may be becoming more efficient as we get closer to the race, but overall, because of the public money and because of the difficulty of handicapping such a large field, it's really, really hard for the market to be super efficient. So there's going to be value on certain horses. It doesn't mean your bets are going to pay off, but it's going to mean that there's bets with extreme value that are offering way more than they should be offering. So obviously I see this and I see Brooklyn Strong and I say, wow, this horse based on this metric is the class of the field. And that is where I'm looking for this race. So we'll talk about my picks later. This is a horse that I would, mix in if you want to mix it in with the favorites, doing exactas, trifectas, superfectas, things like that. We can always do a horse racing episode on exotic wagers if people are interested in that. But as far as the Kentucky Derby goes, that's my short list, and we'll get into my picks later on in the program. So let's move right on from Kentucky Derby to NASCAR in Kansas this week. And when NASCAR expanded in the early 2000s, they added a lot of tracks, and the idea is that they owned all the tracks as opposed to having their events at tracks owned by other people. And, like, for example, Roger Penske owns the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And they race at Indianapolis because it's a very prestigious place to hold an event. But NASCAR would prefer to own the track and make all the money on all the venues and et cetera, et cetera. So they added a lot of what I call cookie cutter tracks, Kentucky, Kansas, Las Vegas, California. They're usually between 1 and 2 miles, and they're ovals. And this is one. There's one in Chicago. This is it, another 1.5 mile track. Expect a fuel mileage race. This is one of those races where people are going to have different pitch strategies. And I don't anticipate a lot of wrecks like last week because that was a restrictor plate race and people are running all out, pedal to the metal. This race is going to be smooth. Don't, make your tires last. Try to do it in fewer stops than your opponents. And you're going to see somebody probably win by like 8 to 15 seconds. I doubt it will be, unless there's like a green white checkered at the end, I doubt it will be a close finish. Obviously, Denny Hamlin is overdue for a win. He's been the points leader. He was going into last week. I haven't looked at the standings, but all of his missteps have been his own fault. There's been one race where Hamlin was wrecked by somebody else, and other than that, he's had pit penalties and other issues that, they're shooting themselves in the foot. So it's hard to, if they're not correcting those mental mistakes. Obviously, he's got fantastic equipment and should be a front runner in this race, and I believe he is the betting favorite at about 550 or plus 600. Great chance for Harvick to get a win. Stewart Haas doesn't have any wins this year. They are struggling. It seems like they're way behind. They're Fords, and so are the Penske cars. But they're way behind the Penske cars in competitiveness. Harvick is a master at these mid-range tracks. He's very dominant at places like Phoenix. A mile-and-a-half tracks, he's very competitive. So I think that he could actually compete for a win here. Has not had a great season. I noticed he's been wearing glasses. I don't know when he started wearing glasses in the car, but I wonder if there's an adjustment period there. And then, like, my little tidbit here is Eric Jones has 5 top 10 finishes in the last 6 Kansas races. Now, he was driving for Gibbs Racing, and now he drives for Petty in the 43. So there's a question of whether his equipment is that good, but if he's that good at that track, I don't think it's a really tough a stretch for him to say top 10 out of 39 drivers. You're asking him to finish in the top 26% of the field. Not a tall ask. So don't forget to look at those odds at the Sportsbook. You can bet on a driver to win the race, to finish in the top 3, to finish in the top 5, or to finish in the top 10. And those sometimes have valuable odds. So we will take a look at those as we look at our picks, which will be coming up shortly. But before we do that, I'm going to talk about Formula One for a second. I know there's a lot of people that don't like Formula One. I like the fact that it's on at breakfast time, so I can watch a sporting event in the morning, especially if I have to work in the afternoons or evenings. I like the racing. There's a lot of strategy involved with the pit stops, and it's not. I mentioned this last week. It's not uncommon for teams to have. Each team has 2 cars. One car will do a certain strategy, and one car will do a different strategy. And there's a mental factor in Formula One. You can't just drive all out. There's a mental factor in the team. There's a team strategist, like a head coach for each team in Formula One. And that plays a big part. And Mercedes has been dominant in that team factor. Ferrari and Red Bull, 2 of the other teams, have made intense strides in getting their cars up to a competitive speed to the Mercedes. And it shows in qualifying where they're running all out and they don't have to worry about saving their tires, that those cars have been very competitive with Mercedes, and even the McLarens have been impressive. But when it comes to during the race and having to use 2 different types of tires and adjust to weather conditions and when to take pit stops, all that strategy, Mercedes is still the class of the field. And that part of the game, the mental part of this race, is really what fascinates me. I know that in Formula One and certain tracks, there is not a lot of passing. You go to a place like Monaco, and there's virtually no passing. It's difficult, but you can pass people obviously if they pit or whatnot. But there's a certain aspect to it that's very different from American style racing, but it's still very, very interesting to watch. Now, as I said, Mercedes no longer the sole dominance in qualifying. Lewis Hamilton is still the class of the field. He's Mercedes' #1 driver. He's the winningest Formula One driver of all time in either titles or total wins. I'm not sure if he's the #1 in both, but he's #1 in at least one of them, and will be the #1 in both before his career is over. Max Verstappen seems to be his main challenger in the #1 Red Bull car. Max won last week, but Lewis Hamilton was the faster car. And the reason I point this out is that he is the better driver, Lewis Hamilton, and if the equipment is not damaged, he has the better equipment. And the fact that they offer Lewis Hamilton at plus money, they continue to do it every week, I'm going to continue to take it. I may seem foolish on this program for saying that over and over again. Might not work out for me, but I feel like that's tremendous value, and I feel like it's an easy, think about your favorite football team or your favorite basketball team. If you're a college football fan and your favorite football team is Alabama, if they offer Alabama against any team at plus 160, do you not say that and go, wow, that is tremendous value. I need to put money on that game. Or if you go through this last college basketball season and Gonzaga was undefeated all the way to the championship game, and you Gonzaga against any team they played during the regular season getting plus 160, would you go, wow, that's tremendous value. I need to get a bet down on that. This is how I see this race. This is how I see this driver. If they're going, he would, other seasons, not too long ago, he would be minus 250, minus 300 to win the race. That's how dominant he has been in the past. And I think he should be plus 100 at the very most, or maybe minus 120 or minus 110 against Verstappen. But at plus 160, I'm going to take him every week. It's just too much value. And you can also look, you can bet on drivers to get on the podium, which means a top 3 finish. And the reason I bring that up is because there are several drivers in the field that are good enough to earn a third place finish. And you might be able to bet on somebody at 800, 900, plus 1,000, plus 1,500 to get a podium. And that could very well happen because there's a lot of things that happen between like the number 5 driver and the number 15 driver. There's accidents. There's cars that suffer mechanical failure. There's driver error. And there's a lot of value on podium finishes. So I don't have a podium finish bet this week. But if you do follow Formula One, that's something that you want to look for if you're looking for value at the Sportsbook. So without further ado, as I blew my picks, the screen of my picks out, so I'm just going to give them to you straight up. For the Kentucky Derby, we are going to go with Brooklyn Strong, across the board, win, place, show, a half a unit on each bet. I feel like this horse will be competitive. I could be very wrong. A horse race with 21 horses that have never raced against each other before is very difficult to handicap, which is why there's so much value. But if you want to be a little more conservative, I would recommend maybe picking 3 or 4 horses and exacta boxing them or trifecta boxing them and throw Brooklyn Strong in there with the other favorites. And that's my 2 cents, what it's worth. There's guys that know a lot more about horse racing than me. They're going to pick another horse, and they could be, one of us could be right and one of us could be wrong. And that's just the randomness of horse racing is something that you have to overcome. And there's lots of ways to do that, and we could talk about it more if horse racing becomes a bigger part of the program. As far as the NASCAR race, I've decided to go with Joey Logano at plus 900, Chase Elliott at plus 900. I think he's a strong candidate to win this week, and Kevin Harvick at plus 900. And those three, I'm going to put a half a unit each on each one of those. And then I'm going to add Eric Jones top 10 at plus 300, a full unit on Eric Jones to finish in the top 10 at plus 300. And then for the Formula One, we just talked about it. I'm going to take Lewis Hamilton at plus 160 for a full unit. That race will be Sunday morning, and I look forward to him showing that he's still got what it takes. And I it's hard to believe that he's so disrespected in the odds. There's smart people making the odds, but in my feeble mind, I just feel like he's very undervalued there, and I would take that number every week. So that's it for the program. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry I started late. Great weekend. Saturday, Kentucky Derby. Sunday morning, Formula One. Sunday afternoon, NASCAR. And, baseball's in full swing. We've got about 2 more weeks of the NBA and the NHL seasons. And then playoffs are going to start. I've got a great projection for Stanley Cup futures that I want to talk about in a future episode. So that'll be coming up as we get ready for the NHL playoffs. But anyway, have a great week. I'm going to play the outro music for you, and let's go get some winners, folks. Take care, everybody.